what I love, like when the moment that I met you was just like when you walked in and I'm like, wait, are you Tony?
Yeah, yeah,
And and it was, my impression of when our friend, Melissa, that introduced the two of us, like
yeah.
she's like, Tony's outside. And I'm like, wait, I'm clearing the space. And when we
Right.
met in Florida, it was a past life regression event. Like, who'd ever think that Tony Rich would be going to a past life regression event with Janet Namaste,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But what was that experience like for you?
For me, that experience was everybody that knows me knows that I'm into what I call weird things. Anything that sounds like it's outside of the norm, I'm with that, right? Case in point, a friend of mine that said, "Hey man, you got to go get this facial." And I said, "What do you mean?" And I said, I've had a facial before. She said, "No, no, this is different because they use electric current." I was like, "Yo, I'm in, book me." That's all I need is that little extra edge, and then I'm interested. So when Melissa, because Melissa and I would always have our um, rabbit hole discussions. So when she told me about it, I was like, past life regression. That sounds complicated and interesting. Yeah. Book me in. And she was like, yo, but it's all sold out. I was like, yeah, but still try to get me in. So, and then when I got there, it was that whole compound was just so
Yeah, it's
interesting,
awesome.
right?
Awesome.
Just
Yeah.
how everything was these different stores and restaurants were so connected. And then when I found my way there, I was like, even walking in and, removing your shoes and what's this thing she was doing? The woman,
Saging. We were saging. We were
yeah, was
saging
it like
you.
was that a hawk or eagle feather? Some type of feather.
Yes. Yeah, it was a shamanic type of feather.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So when all that was happening, I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. Like, because I just love all that. And then to see how everyone was placed in the room, some people sit on the floor, some in that chair that looked like a throne, and then the sofas and things like that. I was like, yeah, this is going to be really cool. And so I was completely open to it because I know how to be within a room and still be within myself, so to speak. It's kind of sort of like when I travel, like people are like, yo, you're always by yourself. Like, no, I'm surrounded by people. But when I travel a lot, it's oftentimes the most isolated time that I have, even though I'm surrounded by people. So I thought it was a great experience because it was all about learning how to take yourself there. That's how I saw it.
Mm.
And it was all about reducing expectations and just sort of just being present in that moment in time. And even some of my observations and looking at the people in the room, what I found to be amazing was just parallel to like when I'm performing and I'm on stage, everybody in that room wanted to be there in that room at that time. So there has to be some purpose there. Because why else
That's
would they be there?
beautiful.
They could have been anywhere. But so
Exactly.
I was grateful to be in that space. And then it was just what you were teaching, the fact that you were teaching first before we were like actively doing anything. I thought that was great because that's the way you should do it. Like, okay, let me get you all here so you understand where we're going, as opposed to like just thrusting you in there and like, I don't know what's going on. So I thought that was like really, really important to do. So I enjoyed that.
No, thank you. And I remember, it's like this, it was a beautiful journey, it was a
Yeah.
beautiful journey.
Yeah.
And it was an honor to have you there as well, because it's like, it's true. You could be anywhere in the world and all of us ended up at that place at that time. There was some divine orchestrated type
Right.
of energy that brought us there,
Right.
but what was your journey of awakening? Like you were a Grammy Award winner. You've really like followed the path of your dharmic creative it's visionary, truly. It's like you
Right.
have this beautiful way of viewing life. And I just love how you just step into that path with such courage and such aspiration. How did that journey begin with you?
I think, quite honestly, there was a lot of things that I've always been a very curious kid, but I think my curiosity really, really peaked when I was 9 years old, because that's when I started singing. I already knew I had like artistic abilities because my dad, you know, we would see dad drawing pictures all the time. Mom was designing clothes all the time. So we were always seeing that, me and my older brother. So I knew that, okay, we must have these abilities as well. And so I started to, I think at a very early age, I was always on this thing of who am I? Who am I becoming? And then later on, I started to become fascinated with, is what I'm doing who I am, or is it just something I'm doing, right? So with music, well, with art first, I could create these images from my imagination. I always thought that that was pretty interesting, the fact that it's a blank piece of paper. And then I start sketching, and then it's something there. With music, it was the same thing. It was just be like silence, because in music is mostly silence. And if you're going to do anything, if you're going to add anything to it, it needs to make sense, right? So it's like, okay, I would sit there with music, and I would come up with these beats and chords and melodies, and oftentimes my pieces of music was not necessarily structured in a way where it would play on the radio. Sometimes I would do like 15-minute pieces of music, because it was just taking you on this journey. And I would paint these visual pictures with sound. Like I was like, and my brother was more of a structural type of songwriter. So he'd be like, yo, man, where's the hook, man? Where's the repetition? And I'm like, I said, man, I'm just vibing. It's just a vibe, right? And we would just groove. And that was how I started playing around with music when I was like 9 years old. And I remember the very first song that I wrote was called Girl. Because at an early age, I had fascinations with girls. I just thought girls were like cooler than guys, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna
Tony, it's not at an early age. It's even at all ages for you.
Yes. So I was like,
gotta call a spade a spade.
Yeah, so it was like, yo, my first song was called Girl. And but it was when I started doing music, it totally changed how I saw everything. So in high school, I was in a marching band, and my band teacher said, so son, are you still going to college? I said, no, I changed my mind. He says, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go into the music business. And he says, because at a very early age, I had a clear understanding of the laws of attraction, right? So I said, I'm going to music business. And he says, really? I said, yeah. And it's in the same amount of time that my other classmates will go to college and hopefully get the job that they study for, I'm going to be a professional. So he said, okay. And he laughed, but he wasn't laughing in a way like he doubted what I was saying. I think he was laughing like, okay, this is a pretty ambitious and bold statement for this kid to make. So I graduated high school in 93, not 93, 89. And all of my classmates went to college. Yeah, but it was March 93. I was a professional in the music business. They were still in college. So once I tasted that, I was like, oh, this tastes good. So from that point on, I would just say these things I was going to do, I was going to achieve. But that was basically the start of it, was me visualizing what I was, not what I wanted to become. And I would walk around and tell my mom, yeah, I'm this, I'm that. And she'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then it happened for me. And once it happened, it tastes good. And when something tastes good, you just want to keep eating it. So I would then, from that point on, I would just say these things was going to happen. And I would see the reality of it, and not just see the reality of it, I would feel the reality of it. And yeah, I know that everything around me was totally not what I was saying, but I could not know that where I was going was where I was going. And I developed this saying that I would say to people all the time: I'm always going to be more than okay, no matter what. But that was the start of it. And that was I started my music career in 90. That was in 93 when I started it. And it was a lot going on at that time, but it was becoming more and more clear. That was the start of clarity for me.
That's amazing. 1993, I graduated high school. 89, yeah. 1993. Yeah, that was That was the year I graduated high school. But I love, like, you know, how you utilize law of attraction even at a young age.
Yeah.
And it's just creating that field of reality of something, that passion that is inside of you, where other people probably would ignore at times. And they just kind of like, you know, they're sheeple. They just go along like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's, you have a backup plan and a backup plan, but it takes it takes great courage, but it also takes some innate knowledge of creating that field, like you did, that field of reality of making of who you are and just doing it, you know, more than okay.
Yeah, it's like imagination, right? My youngest daughter is 20 years old. And I told her, I always tell her, listen, don't be afraid to think more broad in your imagination of what you want to do with your life. Like, just don't be afraid of that. It's no different than someone saying, like, hey, name an amount of money that you feel right now at this point in your life will make significant change. And somebody said like $100,000. And I said, well, so why are you afraid of a zero? They said, what do you mean? I said, add a zero to it, it's $1 million. Like,
but before the decimal point, not after.
Right, exactly. So it's like, it's one of those things, but it's for me also, once I got in the music business, I quickly started to understand something. I knew that I was very, very different than a lot of people that I was working with at the time, because my goal wasn't to be, I never wanted to be famous. That wasn't my goal. I just wanted to create music because I always had a great sense of happiness when doing that. So that was what my goal was. When I did a record as an artist, it was out of curiosity. I didn't have nothing to prove because I was already working on other artists and I was making a good living from doing that. But then when I did my own record, it was just out of curiosity. Let's see what happens. And then it took off, and then it created a relationship between myself and a lot of people that I may never meet again. And I became, in their eyes, a teacher of sorts, or a person that was willing to put my vulnerability on record for them to replay over and over again. And it became something that made them feel understood. And once I got a taste of that, I was all in for being that artist to provide that music. And I knew how to do it, was to, number one, be true to myself in what I was expressing, understanding that I am not making this music for people. I'm making this music to get these things out of my mind. And then I'm going to share a copy with them. And then they will experience what they experience, because I knew that that's the only way that I would create the best expression for them, is that it had to come from a true place. And so in all of that was going on, it was all about me making sure that I was staying true to who I was becoming, because who I was becoming was what I was doing, right? I understood the purpose of why I was doing music, but at the same time, knowing that that's not my only creative expression. But at that time, that's the one it was. It was sort of like when you and I were talking about, I think you had mentioned people that get things done are people that do one thing at a time. I think you had mentioned that, as opposed to just everybody have 100 things going on.
Yes.
And so that was my thing. And I was like, okay, I know I'm an artist. I know I like photography and I do all these other things, but I'll say I'm gonna start with music first. And so I put all energy into that. That's why I think that's why I was successful at it, because I had tunnel vision with that, knowing that I had these other things in my arsenal, you know, but I was like, yeah, I'll get to those eventually in a lifetime. So yeah, that was my start with that. And you're right, courage. It's one thing to know who you are or what it is you're supposed to do. It's another thing to have the courage to step into that. And I've always had the courage to step into that.
That is the truth. But I love how you started, actually, your career was writing songs, right?
Writing
you were
songs
writing
for writing songs for other people.
Which is amazing because words have energy. Words have, power associated with it. Every single letter, every single vibration, every single octave has
Yeah.
a certain vibration associated with it. So it's like literally like you channeling in the
Yes.
vibe of what it is, of how this is. It's not about, I love what you said. It's just like your true expression,
Mhm.
finding your purpose, and you're just giving it away. And hopefully that it will bring out that spark in others. So how how did you gain when you're writing and producing songs for other people, how do you get that inspiration? Where do you get that inspiration? Like, let's say, who, like for Toni Braxton or
Yeah.
Elton John, and I mean, Michael Bolton, there's so many, right? That you've written songs for, but how do you connect to like the energy of, for instance, Toni Braxton, or is it something when you write for others? Where did you find that inspiration?
Well,
Where did it go through?
well, what happens with when you're writing for other people, it's a totally different animal than when I write for myself, right? So when I write
Right.
for myself, it's it's from the brain to the recording. It's like everything about it is
Mm.
all based upon, for me, what I'm going through, what I'm imagining, what I'm experiencing. I always see every place, every interaction with a person as a like an avenue to a certain number of songs that's going to be inspired. But when you're writing for other people, it's very, very different because I I always preferred writing songs for other artists to co-write with them because I saw the importance of them having input into what they're saying so that when they're singing these songs, they believe it because they know it, because it's them. But oftentimes what you would find is that some artists don't write songs. So you have to completely come up with it yourself. So I'll never forget doing this song for Michael Bolton. We co-wrote 3 songs together, and then there's one song I had for him, and it was called Falling. And I gave him the demo, and he says he could not detach in his mind how good I sound singing it. But I said, oh,
Mm.
Michael, you got to sing this. I mean, because I would never say this. This is not anything that I would ever say. This is something that you would say. So when you're working for other artists, like writing songs to them, you do have to give some study into the types of things that they would say, or have a discussion with them about some things that may be on their minds. And what you're doing is you're just going to channel what they're saying, what they're feeling in
Yeah.
the song. So it's sort of like it's a similar process to when you write for yourself. It's just that you're pulling the experience or whatever from a different brain, and then
Yeah.
filtering it through your skill of writing. Right. Same thing with Toni Braxton. Toni Braxton, she didn't want the songs I did on her wasn't she didn't write those songs, but the it was one of those things where she could sing them, and that's one of the beautiful things about artists that are able to interpret what was written. So when you're a singer-songwriter, you're interpreting what you wrote. A singer that didn't write it, they're interpreting what you wrote. So it's
Mm.
just sort of like musical chairs in that sense. But it was the inspiration for songs generally for me comes from what I'm experiencing. If I'm writing with someone, then it's sort of like a collaboration. All right. So let's talk about some things. I like to have discussions with artists and just see what kind of topics they would be interested in talking about.
No, I love that. You're channeling, you're reading their field.
Right.
It's the creative intuitive, that
Right.
that is within you. That's otherwise it doesn't come out genuine at all. And then
Right.
when you listen to a song that was written by somebody else, and if it feels disingenuous, then it's not selling all those records. It feels it's forced. It's forced.
Right.
So you really need to have, like, it's like this beautiful dance, this coherence of,
Mhm.
vibing with what they're feeling at the time. It's being a musical psychologist too,
Exactly. Exactly.
right?
That is so true because
Man.
when I would perform, oftentimes, because I was always charged with something, I always knew that people would know my hit single when I first came out. but I never assumed that they would know any other songs I would perform before or after that. So what I would have to do is, all right, I'm going to set them up for this song. So I would talk. I would talk to them. And I would talk to them much like you did at that session to get them in the headspace of what I'm going to be talking about. And so I would tell a story about the inspiration of that song. And then it would be super quiet in the room because I know I had their attention now. And I'm like, yeah, I got them. It reminds me of a moment when I did this performance at Thurgood Marshall College Fund. It was a fundraiser. And John B was actually performing before me. And people in the room, they were chattering, you know, because they're eating dinner, they're chattering, just talking over his performance. And a friend of mine was like, so what are you going to do? Get up there. I said, oh, it's not going to happen to me. She says, really? I said, you'll see. So I get on stage and we do our first song. We open up, they open the curtains. We're doing our first song. And then once we stop, I said, okay, let me just say this to you all. And you can hear the chatter. Blah, blah, blah. And I said, you know, when you're talking while someone is on stage performing, you're damn near rude. And then you heard people going, shh, shh, shh.
Nobody wants to even put their fork down after that.
Right. But you can hear people that wanted to know what I was about to say, telling everybody else to be quiet. And next thing you know, it was just like, you could hear a pin drop. And then I said, because you never know that I might say something. This music might make you feel something that you never felt before. It could be a pivotal point in your life of change. So just be quiet and listen. And everybody was quiet. So then after I was done, people were running up to me saying, like, how'd you get people to quiet down? I said, listen, there's more than one way. And there's a loving way to tell everybody to shut up. You just gotta know how to do that. And I said, listen, this is what I do for a living. I have to know how to use words in a way to get certain results. And at that point, they were quiet and they would listen. And I was like, so that's sort of like one of the ways you sort of set people up. And then I started to notice from that point on, whenever I would perform, I was having these very teachable moments in between songs because I just didn't think people would know the song. So I had to get them in a space where they would be willing to really hear what the song was saying. So I've been doing that for years because I always assume people don't know all my music. And it's also a very important thing as well.
But it's also, like it's the yin and the yang. That's a very yin thing to do, like in a sense of you're creating a nurturing space, but the yang aspect of it is like, is setting up some sort of order, some sort of, but in a very nurturing way. And it's also about courtesy as well. People are, there are times where people think even speaking over one another, of etiquette and, but there's so much magic in lyrics. There's so much magic in every single, even the art, which I want to segue to it right now. Before we start talking about your art, I want to know, where did you actually grow up? Where were you born?
I was born in Detroit, Michigan.
Nice.
Detroit was a really interesting place to grow up because as kids, we had a lot of outside activity, right? But once I tapped into my to music and art, I would just spend a lot of time inside doing that. But it was I can honestly say that as a kid, I had a really fun childhood with my brothers and my cousins. But once me and my brother got really into music, that sort of took us away from childish things. We were very much into being creative and even understanding the technical aspects of it too. I became really geeky with that. But Detroit was a rough place, but I have to honestly say I was raised on love, not survival, even though that was a place where you had to survive, but I was surrounded by love. A lot of female energy raised me and my brothers, and which I thought was beautiful because we saw so many different examples of strength and love and control and understanding and encouragement. And it was all from the women in our family, you know, and I thought that was beautiful. And I think that was another thing that, you know, it heightened my my appreciation for why I feel more safe around women. I feel more protected. I don't feel like I'm gonna be stabbed in the back by women. I just don't. And I think it's because of the examples that were set by my mother, my aunts, and my grandmothers. It was just a beautiful, beautiful time. But yeah, Detroit that was the place I grew up. I was there until 21, and then I moved to Atlanta, started my career.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
Yesterday, when we were speaking, you spoke about your aunts and like of the wisdom that, you know, the words of wisdom of your aunts, of how life gets so crazy sometimes. But what were the words that she said when you were like, enough is enough?
She said, simplify your life.
Yeah.
That's all she said.
Great
And
mantra.
when she said that, it was like in my brain, it was like this pyramid formed of like, okay, here's the simplicity here. But when she said there's all these things, and I looked at everything and I knew exactly what I needed to do, right? I was like, okay, simplify. This is gonna be easy. You know, it's gonna take some time. It took a few years, but I saw the progress, and I would notice the progress over time was to get it simple. And it reminded me when she said that was because it took me to a point where I remember when I bought my first home, I didn't want to. It's just that my accountant said, you're making a lot of money and you have no expenses.
No write-offs.
Write-offs.
Taxes.
So I'm like, yeah, man, but I don't really need much. He said, yeah, I understand that, but you're going to have to get a house. And so that took me, and the whole time I was in that house, I just always loved, my philosophy was, if I can't walk every square foot of where I live every day, then that place is too big for me, right? So I just never really wanted all of that extra, the extra stuff that complicates your life. I never really wanted all that. But here it was, I was in it, and I was taking care of more than one household for a long time. And that was all of the complications. And then the music business was becoming more complicated. And I was like, yo, this is so distracting, because it's like I'm not creating music in the same way I did, because I have so many things going on. It totally changes your focus, you know? But yeah, those were really interesting periods of time.
How old are you when that happened?
I was, let me see, when I got into the business, I was 21.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say when I was, 99, no, 96 was my first album came out. So between 96 and 99, it was like crazy. Just like, you know, the levels of complication was all that ramped up in that time. And I want to say around 2002 was when I started to like simplify things, you know, and I was on that quest. And my thing was like getting things down to basically zero, achieving nothingness, being okay with sitting still, not doing nothing, and finding great happiness and satisfaction in that. All of those things, that was my thing. People look at me like, yo, what are you doing? Like, listen, I said, I'm on a quest to really be okay with who I am and who I've become. And not feel it, because I've always had this great understanding of knowing what gave me complete satisfaction. It's always simple things. Like I could eat the same thing every day and I'll be fine. I didn't really have to go places to have a great time. Like wherever I deemed my home, that was always the best place to be over every other place. You know, so it was interesting to see that I always maintained my focus on getting to this place of enlightenment. And as you say, we talk about awakening. I was telling a friend of mine yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
So the thing about awakening is that you will, if you're on the right path, you're going to keep waking up a lot. It's not just one time.
Exactly. It's a constant cycle. You know, you think you're awake and then you're like, wait, there's something else, there's something else, there's something else. It's all about the quest. It's all about the journey. It truly is. But it's like, okay, so you found that it's just that money, possessions, you don't get buried with that. That's not the end all be all of happiness. That's not the journey of awakening. The journey of awakening is realizing not to get attached, right? It's the non-attachment.
Exactly. Because there's this saying about the trappings of success.
Yeah.
That is so
Tell
true.
me about that.
Because there are trappings, because it goes like this.
Yeah.
When you are a young creative with ambitions to be successful at what you do, and then once you start making money you've never seen before, you will find yourself buying things that you always wanted. And some people go crazy. I was never really crazy like that at all. I said, but what happens is, let's just say you're this young creative and you got this, this thing going on and you're successful, and then boom, you buy a house. Now you have a mortgage. Never had a mortgage before. Now you have a mortgage. Right. And right at that moment, now you have household expenses. So now you have to continue to make more money than you were making before you got the house to keep the house. And it just piles on. More things you get, now your motivation is different now. And then the fame, which is a disease.
It is, yeah. Well, of course.
Because it's a disease if you desire it, right? Some people are just famous in the eyes of other people and they really don't care about that. But once you become entrapped in it, because the fame is the thing that will cause some people to think that, oh, I can't do anything other than what I do because what people will think of me.
Traps them, yeah, puts them in a box.
Yeah, and I never wanted to be trapped in that. Like I never, not one time, ever hired a security guard. If I wanted to feel secure going somewhere, I just took my brothers with me. Because I have 4 brothers. My brothers will protect me whether they're getting a check or not. It doesn't matter. So, but I never felt unsafe. I would travel by myself places all the time. I've never had any of that craziness, like people going crazy for my autograph. Like, no, it was never like that. Because I just never believed the hype. And when you're an artist and they're promoting you, they're marketing you to people and they're promoting you as if you're the best thing since sliced bread. I'm like, my thing was always, I knew I was good at what I do before you told me that. We just agree on something now. But that doesn't make me better than anybody else. It just makes me, hey, I'm just different than you, but we're human beings. So my thing was, I never wanted to be entrapped. And I watched so many people be that way. But at the same time, even when you are not trying to be entrapped in it, you will have to deal with some of the residues of those entrapments. It is what it is, because you will fall in the perception that you are that way.
100%. 100%. They'll put you in that stigma.
Yeah, but at the same time, I have no control of what people think about me. And quite honestly, it's none of my business what they think of me. But I have to accept the reality that that's what it is. People hear your voice on the radio, see your face on TV, and then they see you in person and they're like, oh my God. But what I've always experienced was people walk up to me and say, hey man, I like what you do. I say, thanks, and keep it pushing. Like I've always kept things normal and ordinary around me. I've always been able to move around like I wanted to without all that stuff, because I never had a desire to be famous.
But the thing is that what you're talking about, ordinary, is what true abundance and true peace actually is. Yeah. This is what people are constantly seeking. When I'm gonna be famous, this is what's gonna happen. Yeah. After I have, this amount in the bank, that's when I'm gonna be happy. After this, like they put all these things when in reality, you found it all along. All that other stuff was just, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
I started reading J. Krishnamurti back in, I want to say it was maybe 2006. A friend of mine, I walk into his house, he says, yo, man, this is your brain in a book. And I was like, what is this? I see J. Krishnamurti. I was like, who is this, man? He says, look, go to the Bodhi tree on Melrose, go find his books. So I started reading his books. And I was like, yeah, okay, I see what he's saying. But J. Krishnamurti said something once, which was, to be great is to be anonymous. Mm-hmm. And I thought about that. I was like, yeah, that is interesting. Because because in the world, people think that someone is great is because they're famous and you can see them. Then I started thinking about like, no, because when people ask me about, hey, what's the some nice music or great music you've been listening to, I would name artists that they never heard of before. And I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. When I've been asked, hey, what's the best project you have worked on? I said, myself as an individual. That's my favorite project. I said, because that's the thing that I'm always working on. I'm always working on improving myself to the most simple form, because that's greatness. Being surrounded, it's not about being draped in all these different things. It's like, yo, like I can walk into a room with jeans and a t-shirt on and people think that I'm being fashionable, where this other guy can walk in draped in $500,000 and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
I get the same attention just wearing jeans and a t-shirt. And that just tells me that I've achieved being true to myself, exactly who I'm supposed to be. And I like me. I'm my favorite person.
And you see, and that's real love, because some would be like, oh my God, this is a bit narcissistic. Oh, I love me. I love me. But in reality, it's being, the humble, it's being humble and humility and all of those things of just being comfortable being who you are. Even when people they're donating money to a cause, it's always best, like this is, my husband and I, this is not for any points or at whatever. We always give anonymously.
Right.
Always.
Yeah.
Always, no matter what, whether it's, $1, whether it's $1 billion. Right. It's always about being anonymous, because it's about the intention for what the purpose may be. It's just things, but I love like how you're acquiring it's the knowledge and of the Zen that you feel inside as part of your soul bank instead of your piggy bank. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Because it's one of those things where
awesome.
I have found that because of how I invest in people, because I invest in a way that with things that money can't buy, right? So my friends know that I'm going to be the person that if they saw an alien, sitting in their living room, they know I'm going to be the person to say, really? What color was his eyes? Right? I'm not going to tell them you're crazy. I'm like, no, tell me all about it. Like, and I always say this to people that I love. It's like, yo, you're safe here. This is a safe space. Like I always tell them I'm their mothership. It's like, yo, you can go and do whatever it is you want to do. I'm always that friend that's going to be willing to listen to you and understand you. That's what I have to give is love. Love is that's my offering. I give it through my music, my art, and everything. Because I think that I love to be great at what I do, whatever that is, even if it's just listening. I could be a great listener. So I just try to, and I look at it like, even for myself, it's like, what do I need to be for myself at any given point in time? And it's the same thing for those that I love. Sometimes I just need to be an ear. Sometimes I need to be a person to give advice. Sometimes I just need to be that person you sit with and we just do nothing, just be quiet, because silence is important too. And if you can have comfortable silence, that is a very, very healing thing as well.
But that's how you, pardon me, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, that's how you hit home, you hit a home run when it comes down to relationships, where you could just sit there with your loved one or somebody that you're spending, time with. Right. And it's the uncomfortable silence is just, it's something that brings so much wealth. And what I love also what you're speaking about, it's not just regular love, it's unconditional love. I love you for who you are, not who I'd like you to be. You know, but that's, I love that you had that wisdom when you were very young, because I definitely didn't. I'll be completely candid. I mean, it's funny how you're like, oh, your first song was Girls, right? It was
Yeah.
about girls. My first song, and by the way, I'm so not a songwriter. I'm like,
Yeah.
I just, and I don't have even a voice, but I remember when I was about 11 years old and I spent a lot of time alone. Like I got sick during that time and I was homeschooled for about 8 months. And I slept a lot throughout the day, and through that time, like I realized you gotta step into being who you are, not of what my father told me I have to
Right.
become. Like
Exactly.
this is what we came into this country. You're going to get educated. This is what you're going to be doing, and I'm like, no, but this is my passion. And I was a young girl, and I remember writing a song at the age of 11. It was called Home, and
Okay.
it was all about the feeling of
Yeah.
the tangibility of feeling comfort in
Yes.
being accepted in different relationships and being accepted in the domain that you're in, being, but the most important thing was accepting yourself and being true to yourself,
Yes.
but
Yes.
that was, I wish I could find those lyrics somewhere. My mother used to keep all of my little like notes and everything
Yeah.
like that. But it's really like
Writing
about,
is therapeutic.
oh my God, it's amazing. Writing is, you're getting your soul's voice on paper, and then
Yeah.
it becomes your vessel, then expands for more of the divines like candy
Exactly.
coming in,
Yeah, you've got to write it. You write it down and get
Yeah.
it off your head. Like my youngest daughter, she's been writing a lot, and she read some of her poetry to me, and I said, "Listen, get away from trying to rhyme." I said,
Mm.
"Just write how you talk, and because that's going to resonate with people. Because it's not always rhymes in everyday life. It's like some things, the rawness of your writing it's like it's like when you say it like it is, and that will resonate with people a lot more than if it sounds like you're rhyming. You're saying this to make it rhyme with that. But one of the best things to do, especially when you're young, is to write down how you're feeling, what you're thinking. I remember when I started when the music business thing, to segue into the art of how it became a very important creative expression for me, because it was the creative expression that I used to sort of heal myself from what I went through in the music business. So at one point, I had locks. I started twisting my hair locked, and I had beautiful locks, right? They were like, because I took pride in the fact that I didn't wash my hair for a year and my head didn't stink. and, but at some point, I decided to cut those locks off. This was 2000. I decided to cut them off. So the guy who would maintain my hair comes over, and I said, "Get the scissors." And he says, "Man, what are you doing?" I said, "I just want to cut them off." And he's like, "What?" This guy was almost in tears because he felt like, "Man, look what we created with your hair. It's like, you want to cut them off?" So yeah, cut them off. And I shaved all my facial hair off. And I told my mom and my brothers and everybody that I was going to Acapulco, because they know I would go to Acapulco every month for a couple of weeks. And that was my retreat. And when I would go there, they wouldn't hear from me until I was called and say, "Who's picking me up from the airport?" So I told them I was going away for a week. And I wasn't going anywhere. I was staying in my house. And what I did was, so I cut my locks off, shaved all my facial hair. I had some notepads. And all I did for 7 days, I didn't watch TV. I didn't talk on the phone. The highlight of my day would be washing fruit. That became an exciting thing to do, was to wash fruit and eat it. I would write music at nighttime only. During the day, I would meditate. I would write down what I was thinking, what I was seeing, what I was feeling. I would bathe twice a day. And that's all I did for 7 days. I want to say like maybe 4 days in, I started to really understand the importance of human interaction. Because it was like this edge where I was starting to feel like, am I losing my mind? Like, because this is really starting, I feel like I'm going through withdrawals of interaction. So when I finally made it through the 7 days and I came out, I remember getting in my car to drive to the store, and it felt like I had forgot how to drive. But that awakening was, dude, you're the only one that's different. You're the one that just isolated yourself for 7 days. Everybody else is on the same thing they was before. And I remembered I had to understand that, like, okay, this is it. And I remember not too long after that, I wrote a song called Traveling Alone, which was talking about, yeah, you might be surrounded by people, but you're the only one that's in your head. And you spend a lot of time there. So you should probably make it a nice place to be. That's
beautiful.
Your home. So because from that point, I was like, and I would tell people like, yo, you ever spent 7 days by yourself? Like just by yourself? No technology, nothing like that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, man, you should try it. That was major for me, because it was different. It was like fasting from people. Like,
but it is.
You know what I'm saying? There's no interaction. It was, wow, that was such an amazing time, because I drew so much benefit from it. And then I understood the importance. It made me really appreciate interacting with people, but at the same time, understanding my need for isolation at times. And that's one of the things that I like about when I'm working on artwork, is that it's very, very much like music. When I'm working on music by myself, it's isolating time. But in art, there's a lot of allowing, right? There's more allowing than it is manipulation. In music, it's all about manipulating sound. But in art, the chemical reaction between different mediums and paint and all that, it's going to do things that you have no control over, and you got to be okay with that. You know, so it's like, that's what I started to love about artwork, was that it taught me to not feel like I got to have control over everything. It taught me that I don't have control over everything. I need to be all right with that. And so that's one of the beauties of that therapy for me in doing artwork, is that I don't have complete control over it, and I'm all right with that.
Well, your artwork is beautiful. You know, well, the most important thing is that you're right with that, but it's even there are times where you are amongst a lot of people, and
right.
There's a difference of being alone and lonely, you know.
Very true.
You could, you know, and it's sometimes when we're alone, we're just never lonely. You know I don't feel that way. You know, I actually, it's but you need sometimes to take that pause and create that buffer.
Yeah.
So because there's so much wisdom, especially when you're surrounded by, you were in the music industry, you were surrounded by people all the time, you were going 100 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I need to control the speed a little bit of this. Yes. And the only way is actually through isolation at times, where you could get introspective. Yeah. And no, I think it's a beautiful thing. And one thing that I realized when you're speaking about your hair and your locks and everything like that, our hair holds memory, you know, it holds memory.
Yeah.
And think about this. I'm gonna. You're so fascinated by the women's psyche. I'm gonna let you in on something. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm gonna let you in on something. You know that you pissed off a woman. I'll tell you what thing. When she cuts her hair, yes. or when she goes blonde, or suddenly she comes out with blue hair, and you're like, what happened? And I'll tell you, this is something that a lot of women won't tell you, but our hair holds memory. The American Indians also, like, you know, when Christopher Columbus, this is even historical things, when Christopher Columbus came over and whatever it is, and they started shaving the hair off of American Indians and all these things, it was so desecrating, you know, because they don't cut hair. It was because of a spiritual aspect
Right.
of like, even in certain cultures, like in, Sikh religion, when
Yeah.
they're growing their beards, and this has to
Exactly.
do with certain different, I think this is moon energy as well, like around this area. So here we are, right? With our hair, and the moment when we get a haircut or whatever it is, you're like, all right, I'm done. I
Yeah.
want something brand new.
Yeah.
So there's something about, if you are lucky enough on this, while we're alive here now, and we have, hair. Some people don't. They have
Right.
alopecia. They're going even through chemo, whatever it may
Right.
be. Right. There are times where they don't have hair, but our hair holds memory. So when you pissed off a woman, I can tell you 1 billion%, she is getting a brand new haircut, a brand new
Color or
weave,
something,
a
right?
brand new color, she's getting her hair like braided, unbraided, whatever it is. But it takes an emotional baboom in
Yes.
order for us to do something with our hair. And it's a wake up. So that moment where you're like, here are the scissors to your barber, and he's like, what are you doing? You had what, like, like it was like a wake-up call, like the
Yeah.
way that, you know what I'm saying?
Because while I was locking my hair, well, no, just prior to me locking my hair,
Yeah.
when I started locking my hair, I was on the verge of divorce,
No way.
right? So that
Wow.
divorce was all tied up in there. And then
Mm.
immediately after that, I was involved with um, a woman that this relationship was, she turned out to be a pretty toxic person. So when I decided to cut my hair, I knew exactly why I was cutting my hair. I'm like, yeah, this got to go. I'm not with this person no more. I'm done with that divorce or whatever. It's like, yo, the hair has to go. And he didn't understand it. I'm like, no, this has got to get off me. And he's looking like, he just didn't get it. I'm like, dude, come on, you have locks. You know what's locked in your hair.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, I gotta cut it, get this, I gotta move on. I'm done. I'm done with it. So yeah, that's
It's
hair.
it's
Yeah, that's
it's
like it.
true.
Yeah. So I
And
had to let that.
it connects us to our seventh chakra, it connects us to the divine, and
Yeah.
if you started meditating at that time too, you want a clean slate, you
Yeah.
want a tabula rosa, whatever that looks like to you. What kind of meditations do you do? Like what
I don't
yes.
regularly meditate like when I sit down, and it's interesting because I do believe that there's like many different forms of meditation.
Sure.
And I think that over the years, I've discovered that I've been doing a lot of things not knowing that's what I was doing, but that's what I was doing. Like I've been intermittent fasting for years, but I never called it that. I never saw it as that. I just knew that I didn't like to eat until like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But
Yeah, me
that's
too.
called intermittent fasting, right? So even when it came down to meditation, I was like, I started thinking back, like, yo, there's been plenty of times where I'll just sit on my sofa and I just close my eyes, I just sit there. And I'm not really thinking about a lot. So I was like, yeah, I've always been meditating, but I just never said like, oh, let me meditate. I just sort of like move into these things. It's really interesting. And then even when I'm painting, that's like a form of meditation because I don't really use brushes a lot. I use my hands, and I use paint knives or sponges and rags and things. And I'm doing this thing. And when I'm into that, I'm not thinking about nothing else. It is probably some of the most quiet, mindful time that I have is when I'm like art, because there's no sound.
That's
You know what I'm saying? It's
meditation.
quiet. It's
Yeah.
just I'm just into it, and I really get into it. And then then I'm fascinated when I see paint on my hands. I get excited. Equally as exciting as when I smell garlic on my fingers after cooking. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's like,
But it's like when you're in the flow,
yeah,
it's like you don't even feel that, time has even gone by,
right. You lose
when
sense of
you're
time.
you lose complete sense of time. You're operating in complete quantum, you know?
Right.
So that medium of art of you painting is just, that's your form of meditation. You know, that is your form of, you know, connection, of peace, of Zen, you know.
Yes.
I love your artwork. I mean,
Thank you so much.
it was such an, you know, like I loved seeing all of it. I see the depth. It's interesting when I scan through everything, I'm like, wow, it's as if something is painting through you, you know, utilizing all of the wisdom that you've attained,
Right.
you know, throughout your life, you know, because it's not all like, yeah, this is my creative journey. I'm going to be a great this and
Yeah.
all success. It's not great idea, success, beautiful. No. And I love, and I see that, and I see the depth in the painting, like the emotions of it. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
It's like with what I'll do with this is a piece I'm working on now. Some pieces, it's like life lessons for me because I will get to a certain point where I had an intention of how I wanted this piece to look, and it starts taking a turn. And I don't like the way it's looking. And then I have this thing that I say, yeah, I'm about to fix this. It's like I'm fixing my life. But I know that's like, okay, but the only way I'm going to fix this, I got to do some things, but I got to allow some things. And then it turns out to be 100 times better than what I thought it would be. But I have to, in those moments, I don't stop until it looks the way I want it to look. It just may take a little bit longer. And I always have some pieces I can do really, really quick. But it wasn't like me trying to do it really, really quick. It just happened that way. So that's one of the things I love about very in-depth pieces too, because I'm the type of person, when I look at art, I look into the art. I want to see, what is that I see under there? Wow, that's red underneath all that black. Like, I wonder how they did that. And I'm always fascinated with other artists because I know that I wouldn't have done that like that. And I think the same way about music. Whenever I see what people create, I'm fascinated by how they create it. And then I'm inspired to be more creative. That's kind of like the circle, you know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, that was okay. Let me be even more creative. And then I create, every time I do a painting, I create a new process or a method of doing something. And I'll just do some pieces like that. It's a never ending well of things to do in creative spaces. And that's why I dabble in creativity so much, because I never know what it's going to lead me to. Something else.
When did you start painting?
I started painting like seriously. It was in 2000. It's because the music business had gotten really, really crazy, and I was like, I need to do something else. Otherwise, everything's gonna blow up. And so I started in 2000. I was doing oil paint, and it was funny because my first painting was a spaceship, some alien ship. And I was like, yo, this is weird.
Of course it was. It was the motherboard, the mothership.
Exactly, it's like a mothership.
Of course.
Because you know what's funny about that painting is that I still have that painting. No, I gave it to my son, 9. I have it. He has it rolled up in his closet. But then my second piece was, because with oil paint, it takes so long to dry. So you can move the paint around for a long time.
Yeah.
It'll stay wet for weeks, right? And I did a nude because I was like, I want to see if I can blend. And I was blend with my fingers, not with a paintbrush. And I did it was a headless nude. No, there was no knees, no legs. It was just the thighs. It was almost like a bust, right? And I was like, wow. So then I did several pieces like that. And then I would do like a blend of like realism and abstract. And then I took a break for a while. Like I would take these breaks. I would paint for a while, and then I would have months where I wouldn't paint. Then I'll go off and on. And then I want to say it was maybe 2015 when I started dabbling with acrylic paint. I was afraid to at first because I was like, it dries so fast. But then I was like, but for layering, it's perfect. So from that point on, I started painting a lot. And then in the last 4 years, I've painted like tons. It's like it's nonstop. I rarely, I'll probably take off maybe three to 4 weeks of not painting, and then I'm back on it. And like my last batch of paintings I did, it was 12 paintings I did in 14 days. But it's like,
Wow.
but I was working on them at the same time. It takes the same amount of energy to work on 12 at once as it does one. So it's like it became that it's just, I don't know, it's just a comfortable space to be in when I paint. And especially when I don't have an agenda with it.
Exactly. It's not like do you like paint in terms of series, or do you paint in terms of whatever, like, the mood is at that moment?
It depends. Like, so
Yeah.
if I have a concept of like there was like a little piece on some of my paintings, I decided, oh, what if I did a piece that had this over the whole thing? And then once I got into it, I was like, okay, this is a lot more involved than what I thought, but it turned out to be awesome. So from that point on, I did, like, of those 12 pieces, all of them were somehow connected to that concept of what I did. So it just depends on, and then like for my place where I have here, it's like all my walls are white. So most of the pieces I have up are black because I just have white walls. I'm like, let me just put some black up in here, So, and it's cool. It works out because working with just one or two colors is actually more involved and complex than people may think. You think like,
Yeah.
hey, it's black. Like, yeah, but that means you have to create texture. The texture that you create doesn't have to be black. It can be any other color. And then you go over with black. But then when you look into it, you see the depth of all
I
of
love
those
that.
things that were done, and then the power of, think about this. I have a process that I just use white and off-white and black. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes more discipline to not use a bunch of colors. Because most people think,
Of
like, okay,
course.
a bunch of colors. But I'm like, no, I'm just sticking with black. That takes discipline. Just to keep it that simple. It's because then it can be that powerful. Or like I have some pieces, it's a lot of white. You might see some little things here and there. Because it's all about, on the painting, creating a focal point. And that
I
focal
remember.
point color doesn't have, it can be whatever you want.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
there's something that you mentioned when we first met,
Yeah.
about what you actually put in every single one of your paintings. I think I was sharing the story about Salvador Dali, and how Picasso was his mentor,
Yeah.
and he had this fear that was within him, subconscious fear. And when he would be painting, Picasso told him that if you paint what you're fearful of and put it there, it's like, just like you were saying about
Yeah.
putting your thoughts into words and just writing things down, how therapeutic
Right.
that is. That's meditation. So Picasso told Dali, just paint what it is that you're fearful of, and then it'll dissipate. So he had a fear, and it isn't a grasshopper. Do you remember? Like, it wasn't a grasshopper. People think, oh, Dali had a fear of grasshoppers. No, it was the whole metaphor of going forward, right? Because grasshoppers can't go back; they can only go forward.
Exactly.
Once you go forward, you can never turn back. The past is gone. So he had this fear of, like, ever going back. So in every single one of his paintings, if you look, you'll find a hidden grasshopper there. And take a look. And you mentioned something to me, into the audience, when at my seminar, like when we were doing the PLR. What is it that you paint in every single one that, like, represents something of yours? In every one of your paintings, you were mentioning that.
It was, what it was that it was it's like it started out where I did these. There was two pieces that were 30 by 60, so pretty big pieces. They side by side, and I had these it's like red and gold squares. They were just randomly placed somewhere, and my wife at the time said, "Hey, you should do that on all your paintings." And I was thinking, like, a red and gold square? Nah. So, but the colors, the color concept, that red and gold together looked good to me for some reason. It just resonated with me, right? So I was like, oh, okay, I'm looking at that. But what I started doing was at the bottom of my paintings, I would draw this pyramid, and the pyramid would be red and gold, but I would then tone it down with black. So I would paint the red and gold, and it would be a metallic gold and this crimson red, and then I would paint it black. And once the black dried, I would just rub it, scrub it, and give it like some agitation. And then it would take on this look that was like really, really interesting. I was like, ah, that's it. That became my thing. So in addition to my signature, that's another way of expressing that this is one of my pieces. And then I just found different ways of doing it depending on what the painting was, the shape of it. Because I had to see like, okay, when is depending on, so that it doesn't, because sometimes I like for it to be subtle and not just like sticking out there. And sometimes you just can't help it. But if the surface of the painting is mostly white and you see it there, you're going to see it. But every artist has a thing with their artwork. It's the same thing in music. Like people can easily recognize my music. It's something they say, like I always tend to say something. Even if
it's your soul signature. You hear it, you feel it. It's in the vibration of Tony Rich, you know, whether it's in your artwork.
I think it's an amazing thing, because it's like you wind up doing that without even sometimes intentionally doing it. You stamp your work. It's like your work is stamped with your vibration some kind of way. And I think we all do it. It's like, I don't know if anyone has ever told you this, but it's like with you, how you speak, the love is in your voice. It's how you say what you're saying to people, right? Whereas I would probably say it in a totally different way, because we could be saying the same things, but your delivery is loving. So you can't ever feel like, people can't really ever feel off-put by you, because the way you're saying it's like when Michael Jackson was telling his crew in this movie, This Is It, when he said, he was telling them something and he ended it with, he says, and I say that with love, L-O-V-E, love. So occasionally I'll joke with people if I'm saying something they think is kind of heavy, and I say, no, but I'm saying it with love, L-O-V-E, love, like Michael Jackson.
I love that.
So everybody has that stamp, you know, and it's like it's just that uniqueness of how you do what you do. It's like you just can't make it up. You're going to deliver it how you deliver it, and that's the uniqueness between individual to individual. It's like how we do what we do. In music, even in art, we have limited materials. In music, we have 12 notes, 12 keys, a very limited amount of chords. But it's about, what are we going to do with that? It's like we're all given the same type of clay, and we have to shape and mold it in a unique way to make people say, hey, I want that. Because if not, then if you're gonna do it just like the other person, then what's the point?
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that also, because of your view of your perception of the way you interpret my vibration too, because I really needed that after this week.
No, seriously.
I've had some call me out that I don't say things with love this week, but it's also Mercury's in retrograde. We're going into the eclipses, and that sometimes maybe I'm too straightforward, and I'm like, but I really didn't mean it in a way of insulting or at all. It's all for to see,
I get that
just see what I see. Yeah. And you're sitting there, it's so funny, and behind you is like pictures of all different, it's just stars, and literally when you're speaking,
it's all black.
It's all black, but the stars are coming out, and that is actually the uniqueness of who each individual soul is there. Like it's the way that one sparkles a little bit to the left, one sparkles more on the top, one is, you know, it depends on the way the light is reflecting on it, you know, and that truly is like, of the uniqueness, the self-expression of who you are.
Yeah.
Just, that's amazing. What advice, if you would you give back to your 21-year-old self when you first like went back when you said, you know what, I'm getting into the music industry. This is what I'm doing. I'm following. But what advice, knowing that you know now, that
What
you
would I have done
you would,
different?
yeah, what would you have done different, or what would you have done more of,
It's a few things. I wouldn't have gotten married, because I got married that first year. I was too young to get married. I did not know what was required of me to be married. At the same
You got
time,
married young.
yeah, and I did not realize how much I was not going to be available physically to be there, because I was going to be on the road so much. The other thing was, and also because I became a very unpopular person in my house because I was gone so much. And I was not understood because I was married to a person that wasn't creative and didn't understand creative people. So I wouldn't have done that. And I wouldn't have assumed that the people that I was working with professionally, that they were my friends. Because
That's a big one.
Yeah, that was a thing in the music business. It's always this whole, yeah, we family. Like, no, it's not. That's not true. And I also assumed that everybody that I knew that was doing music, that we were all doing it for the same reason. So that's all it was. There was assumptions that I made. Every decision that I made business-wise, I'm proud of. I would make the same decision, and some of them brought on some things that were very, very difficult to deal with, but I still would have made that same decision because it's about integrity. But yeah, those are the things. It was just the assumptions that I made about people, because I assumed that, hey, we're all in the music business. Yeah, we're family. Everybody's doing this for the same reasons. No, that's not true. It's not. And you'll find that some people are just there just to make money. And if they're there just to make money, they will stab you in the back quick. And they will not care about your love and your commitment to your creative expression. They won't care. So those assumptions actually created some paths that I had to deal with, but I never saw what I had to deal with as being permanent. It was all transitory. It was like everything that has a beginning has an end, And so I was always like, yep, I'll be through with this in a minute. No matter how long it takes, I'll get through it.
That's the law of impermanence. But I'll tell you something, greed is ugly.
It is.
Greed is ugly. Greed is really ugly, especially and love isn't ownership either, especially when you're a tool or a pawn. Is there a book, like, it's almost like the life lessons of when you're a kid, the 5 life lessons in kindergarten, or all I really needed to learn, I learned in kindergarten. I know there's a book like that. We have to look it up after this, but it's like almost like the life lessons of of just like the first year in the music industry, of following your passion, of like you all those laws of the universe, they come in, they're not really your friends. Number one, follow your dreams. Don't be a sheeple.
Exactly.
Everything comes to an end. Like it's yeah, so it's pretty insightful. Just that 1 year, right?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was a school. It was like being in the music business was like going to a university, and then you realize like, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's not anything like you think it's going to be. And then once you're in it, you're like, if you are a grounded person, everything that rubs you wrong about it is going to be enough reason for you to realize that this is not about me. I'm not with this. I'll navigate through and do the business I need to do, but nah, I'm not resting my head here. This is not home for me. And that was my thing. Like, I've never, even when I think of the planet, and I'm like, when people are like, yo, so why, because I firmly believe that, live in as many places as you can in a lifetime. For a time. You don't have to live nowhere forever, but move around, plant yourself experience, and then move on, go somewhere else. My grandmother taught me that. You know, whenever you can, move, experience, live, love, be inspired, create, and then move again, do it again. Just keep doing it. And your life, you'll have a much more fulfilling life because you are doing everything that you want to do. And as my aunt told me, hey, as long as you're doing what you want to do and it makes you happy and you're not hurting yourself or anybody else, there can be nothing wrong with it at all. You know,
That's true.
it's a
Yeah.
very important thing, just to be alive and aware of who you are, but at the same time having no fear to be who you are and who you're becoming. That's the other part that some people have missed. It's like, yo, if you're an ever evolving individual, you're always constantly changing. And so therefore, don't be afraid of that change. Be open to it. Don't be so rigid on all your different beliefs. And, you know, make it a little bit fluid. You might, like, I can't tell you what I'm going to like or dislike next week from today. I don't know. I can tell you I won't be eating any meat, but outside of that, it's like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to eat.
But that's the nectar, but you're drinking the nectar of life, you know. There's so many places, there's so many experiences, there's so many people, and you know, there's definitely a bigger picture. We don't know it all. It's experience, but it's about experiencing things with integrity and with unconditional love. It's not the intention to hurt, it's the intention of sharing, you know. And I love that, you know, like my husband and I, we were talking today, like what are we going to do for summer break with the kids? I have a child that's going to be going to college in the next year, and we're like, well, we're going to be traveling and looking at universities. Where should we go? And it's not just staying put in this one area. As much as I want my kids close to me because I'm such a mama bear and I'm intuitive and I know a lot of things, but they're such amazing kids. It's just, I want them to have the experience of their individuality and what it's, and to see and experience as much as they could possibly experience. Because we have just a few, how many breaths on this planet Earth? There is a certain limitations and we don't know. And I love the way that you are living your life, the way you're expressing your love through your arts, through your words, through everything. And if some people want to see your artwork, is it out there? Is it somewhere on display? Can people, you know?
No, I haven't started posting yet. But
please.
I will soon. And it's interesting because my oldest son, he's 24. Well, he's about to be 24. He lives in Brooklyn actually, and he's an artist. He's an actor.
He was right near me.
Yeah, he just moved back. He left there for a few months, and then but he went there. He moved there straight out of college because he went to Carnegie Mellon. Once he graduated, he moved to New York. And but I told him, we had this conversation. It was a really beautiful conversation because for a couple of years, you know, our relationship was kind of weird because he was in a different headspace. But we were talking, and he said, I could hear that he was crying. I said, dude, what are you doing? He says, oh, I'm just standing outside holding on to this tree crying, right? And I said, hold on to a tree.
Weird.
And he said, Dad, I just want to apologize to you because for so long, I did not understand how you moved and why you moved that way. But now I do. And I said, that's because you move the same way. As a creative, he started saying things and just like, he didn't understand me until he started understanding himself. That was some beautiful, beautiful thing. And I was like, and I love the fact that he went to Carnegie Mellon because Carnegie Mellon there's such a mixture of different types of people.
Diversity, yeah.
Right, and I knew that would set him up for how the actual world is. And my oldest daughter, she went to Howard, which was not a huge reflection of that. This is HBCU, so she would have more of an adjustment, but she adjusted once she got out of college. And then my youngest daughter, she's very well adjusted of being around different types of people. So they all spread out. So my son is in New York, my oldest daughter's in Detroit, my youngest daughter is in Texas, and my youngest son is in Atlanta. So it's like, I just love the fact that they are now living their lives, moving around, doing their thing, you know, and And they're all going to understand me more by being who they are, because they have that same creative spirit about them. And I was like, listen, just let it all out, man. Just realize you have a lifetime to be creative in all these different ways. Pick one to start with, and then do all the rest of them over time. And I told them, I said, listen, you'll be happier the more true you are to yourself. Because they always ask me questions about all types of things. And I always tell them the truth. And the reason why I would tell them the truth, because I'm like, yo, you're not ever going to be able to say I lied to you about anything, even Santa Claus. Because people would tease me, like, why'd you tell your kids there's no Santa Claus? I said,
I did the same.
Santa Claus. I'm like, your parents buy you those gifts. I'm like, I'm not going to start. I said, listen, I'm not going to start lying to you. I'm just not.
But I love that. Yeah. It's you're teaching them in order to be you're being a great parent to them because you learned how to be a great parent to yourself.
Good point.
That's really, how could you, like people like, oh, I love my kids so much. I love them. There's actually a universal law. You can't love somebody more than you love yourself.
No.
Unless you love yourself, there's no way that you can, love any other human being or sentient being unless you feel that love for yourself. So what an amazing gift you are to your children, to humanity, even to the cosmos with that first spaceship, picture that you did and the stars behind you. And let me tell you something, after this call, we'll talk, but knowing that I do something called the Destiny sessions, and you are something where you and I are actually from the same place. It's called Star Karma. And Star Karma are, it's like these sister planets that incarnate. I know we're getting really esoteric, so whoever's listening to this podcast, if this is too woo-woo, you can just find Tony Rich on tonyrich.com and you can stop it here. But we're going woo-woo a little bit. So there are 7 sister planets, and these are, you can tell, like another Star Karma person can tell of, it's like soul recognition that they're from the same place. You just know it. And it's the eyes are the windows to the soul. You feel immediately, you actually are from that place, from Star Karma. Like regular, I don't want to say regular because there's no such thing as regular. Everyone is a unique being. Yeah. But people go through around 45 to 50 different life lessons, like of universal laws that they have to go through. Right. Star Karma do not, and I'll explain. Star Karma are people that they resonate differently. They vibe in a different way. How do you know this? They're usually creatives. They're usually very avant-garde. They are the rebellious child. There's sometimes even where they would feel like almost sometimes that they're an orphan child, and I'll explain why. It's like, where do I fit in? How did I end up here? It's even something like that. But Star Karma people they go through not just one life lesson. It's almost like 7 simultaneous at the same time. So sometimes you feel like you're like in parallel lives. So it's actually, people think, oh, well, you only have to go through those 7 different lessons. So it's much easier than going through 45 or 50 something. Yeah. But in reality, those other people go through one, and then they go to another lifetime, they incarnate, then they go through another one, and Star Karma go through 7. Think of like the Star of David, right? A star. And that's what it looks like. And you're in the middle, and every single triangle, as soon as you said pyramid, I knew immediately that was every single triangle, which is a pyramid. It's the 3s, right? Has a certain lesson associated with it. And there's 6 other corners. And the first one, you are in the center of it. And if it's the love that you have for yourself, and then you could go and fill in every other triangle, which by the way, and the triangle, which is the number of 3, and your son who's 9, right? It's like the power of 3s. And yesterday when we got off the phone talking about numerology, it was 333, which is just, it's just being cognizant and being aware of the moment. The universe speaks to us at all times. So
it's just all about if you're paying attention.
Yeah,
that's it. That's
totally.
It's all about if you're paying attention. I remember talking with a friend of mine, and I said, "Listen, I know that you're probably thinking that what I'm saying sounds like it's coming out of the blue and random, it's all over the place, but I promise you it all connects. And they're like, yeah, okay. And then I connect it. And it's like, because I said, listen, I speak more freely when I feel comfortable around people. That's when it starts to flow. But I also had to come to understand that with certain people, they would, if I'm talking about a certain something, they're not in that headspace, it's going to go over their head. So I had to then start to detect, like, nah, I can't talk to this person about that kind of thing. They're not there yet. And then I just started to learn how to be more attentive to what I know a person could handle or not. So there have been plenty of times where I have talked people out of interacting with me because I'm like, nah, you ain't ready for this. And they're
Yeah,
like,
it's a barometer.
Right,
you
I'm
know,
like, no, this is gonna be
yeah.
a bit much for you because I do not think in conventional ways, and you'll probably find some of my views to be a little require you to be a way that you don't want to be at this point in your life. And so I would say that just to save them time and energy, and save me time and energy, because I don't have time to babysit people's emotions or their lack of understanding based upon, because that's not where they are. And because sometimes when you are that type of person and you have that vibration, you automatically come across as being intimidating to people.
Totally.
And you also come across as knowing it all, when in fact, you don't think that you know it all. They think that you think you know it all because they think you know it all, but they don't like the fact that they think that. It's crazy.
No, and it's none of our business of what they think of us. Exactly. Right?
Like blank. So what happens is when you put people in the room that are thinking the same way, it's not a big deal. It's just like, no, it's not weird. It's just like, yeah, I get that. So when you're saying certain things, I'll be like this. Or when we got off the phone yesterday and I see my phone see 333. And what's crazy is as I'm screenshotting it, sending it to you, you were sending a text that said 333.
Yes.
Because we noticed that, so the average person would not notice that. They wouldn't think twice about it. It's like, oh, 333. Like, no, we just ended our call at 333. Or here's another good example. My friend John played professional ball. John Sally, he played for the Pistons, Lakers, right?
Of course.
His number when he played ball was 22. The company that his daughter, she has a cannabis company, it's called Deuces 22. The longest conversation he and I ever had, we talked for 22 minutes, right? We never talked that long. And when I saw it, I sent him a message. I said, dude, we just talked for 22 minutes. How ironic is that? So I pay attention to things like that. It's like, I thought that was so cool.
That's awesome. That's the way they speak to us, and it's validation. It's when we see those numbers, it's there. And 333 is the energy of connecting to the inner child, connecting of what your true happiness is, of letting go and surrendering. And 22, by the way, that equals the number 4. That's the vibration of foundation and trusting yourself.
Gotcha.
That's I could speak for hours with you. Oh my God, but I'm going to play a game with you. We're going to close it. But if people do want to find out more about like your artwork, I know you didn't post it yet, but I cannot wait until you do. How can they?
On Instagram.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
my Instagram. That's the Toni Rich. So that's
Toni Rich. Yep.
Yeah. So that's TheTonyRich.
Awesome. We'll have that in the show notes for everyone. All right. Ready? We're gonna play this or that. Ready?
This or that.
All right.
Okay.
Day or night?
Night.
Okay. Pizza or tacos?
Pizza.
Mountains or oceans?
Oceans.
Comedies or documentaries?
Comedies or documentaries? I can't say both.
Oh man. Okay. A
Oh, wait, wait.
docu-comedy. A docu-comedy. We have to make one.
Because I love documentaries, but I
Me
love to laugh.
too.
So comedies are good. And quite honestly, Dave Chappelle is like watching a comedy documentary.
Oh,
But
they,
if I had to lay it down, I think that I think I would say documentaries because I tend to learn a lot from those.
Dave Chappelle is freaking awesome.
Yeah,
Dave Chappelle. Wait, he does Dave Chappelle have a documentary, by the way? Maybe
no,
that would, okay.
but
Well, he
if he
should.
did, it would be the best.
It would
I
be, it
love to
would be the
laugh,
best.
but I would say that documentaries, because documentaries usually are going to definitely teach you something, whereas when it comes to comedies, you never know. Not all comedies are very educational like that.
But there's so much truth to comedies. I could tell you that.
Yes, it is.
Oh, it's all truth. Just tell, this is speaking from a Russian Brooklyn girl, trust me, everything is about sarcasm and it's all truth. Dog or cat?
Dog or cat? I would have to say dogs because I'm allergic to cats.
There you go. Me too.
Yeah.
Phone call or text?
I will say phone call because I think that text is great foreplay, but the phone calls can be orgasmic.
I love that. Now, this is really interesting for a fellow creative musician. When you're walking, would you rather listen to music or a podcast?
Music.
There you go. All right, cook or order in?
Cook. I'm a chef.
You're a vegan chef?
I'm a vegan chef. Yes, the
No
promise.
way.
My cooking will lay you out. That's how some of my friends become interested in being a vegan or even segue into being a vegan is they try my cooking. Yeah, I would much prefer cooking than going to a restaurant. I probably eat at a restaurant maybe once a month, if that. I cook most of the time.
But it's art. You're expressing art. This is amazing.
Cooking
oh my
is
God.
voodoo. Mixing, flavors and things. You can be really creative in the kitchen. I love cooking.
There's a lot of love that goes in the cooking.
That's what my son said. He
A
says,
lot of love.
Because you put love in it. I said, you're right.
Oh, that's always the secret ingredient, And thank you so much for reminding us that actually love is a secret ingredient through it's your muse. It was so much fun speaking with you. I could do this all day with you. Right now it's 2:55, but I could speak until 3:33. but it's been amazing, Toni. It's such a pleasure. Truly, truly, truly. You're such a beautiful inspiration and such an amazing light. So
I'm just respecting you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And until next time, I look forward to speaking to you again.